Well, good day, good people. I'm Phil, and we talked in the last tutorial about functions. So, one topic that is highly linked to this topic and that is also hugely important is the topic of scope. Okay? Functions are a very good way for us to talk about scope because functions store variables or use variables, and it is important for you to see how this might affect your programming. And several variables within those functions have different scopes. Now, what is scope? Scope is a synonym for visibility. That's basically all it is. It sounds complicated when it is not. Scope means visibility. And here we have different scopes. So, local, global, and static. You will see what those are and how you can use them. So these are the basics. Local and global scope. Variables declared within a function are only visible within that function. Okay? And same thing goes for variables declared outside a function. They are only visible outside that function. And if you use the global keyword, you can access outside variables in a function. Okay? Now let's see in practice what that means, because it's always important to get some practice done here. Let us start with a function. You remember, we used the function keyword, then we used the function name in camel case. So if you use several words, you would do it like this. This is camel case when you put the first letter of the next word in capital letters. Okay, yeah, why not? Let's say it's the test function. It does not take any variables, and in a new line we have the curly brackets. Here we go. Okay, so let's start with a variable declared outside a function to show you what global scope is. For example, here we have the variable x, which stores the value 4. Okay. Now, this here, because it's not within a function or a class or anything, this has a global scope. I can access the variable x from everywhere in my program. For example, here, I can go ahead and call my variable x, and it will print out 4. Okay? Then I have some more code and so on. And again, I can echo out this variable, and I will have 4 again. So this means global scope. A variable declared outside a function has always a global scope, and it can be accessed outside a function. Okay? Now, if I tried to echo out x within this function, let's see what happens here, then this doesn't work. The 4 is from down here. Let's erase that for you to see what happens, okay? So now the function tries to echo out something that it cannot see. For some people this might seem hard to understand because, well, it's part of the program, and why can't it see something that has a global scope? That was kind of what I thought in the beginning. But the thing is, a function is like an isolated environment, okay? It's like a little isolated program, so it can only see what happens within it, and even though x is global here, it can't access it. I would show you how it can access it though. Okay, now let's go ahead and see what local scope means. You know what? For better readability, I will call this variable global scope, and the variable within is the local scope variable, and it stores the value 10. Okay, so if I try to echo out x, this will not work. And on the other hand, you guessed it, if I try to echo out local scope, well, this doesn't exist anymore, so we might as well delete it. And if I were to echo out local scope, well, obviously it works. Okay, wait, local scope 10, echo, well, okay. One important thing is you have to call the function. If you don't call the function, it doesn't work. So test function, no parameters given, call it, here we go, 10. And just to show you that I wasn't lying to you, we go ahead and try to echo out the global scope as well. And this will throw an error because the variable is undefined. Well, for the function. Globally, it is defined. Locally, it is not. Okay? So let's comment that out. We will not get this notice anymore, and the local scope variable gets echoed out. Now, on the other hand, let's try and echo it out here. What a surprise! Again, the undefined variable. Well, local scope, that's the variable name, but also it is because of the local scope that outside this function, well, it basically does not exist. Okay? So a variable that is declared within a function has a local scope, and it can only be accessed within that function. So what does it mean? Well, that does mean that you can have local and global variables with the same name. So I could go ahead and declare a variable called global scope in here, give it the value 6, and echo it out. And this would where is it? Global scope. Always remember the $sign. And now if I echo this out, well, we get a 6. Okay, it echoes out the global scope, which has 6. And well, there you go. So you can have a variable with the exact same name in your function than outside, because they don't touch each other. Okay, they don't get in the battle and say, well, I'm 4, but I'm 6. So you can also access a global variable from within a function when you use a keyword, a global keyword. Okay? So how would we do that? So let's say we have the variable global scope, which stores the value 4. It lives in the global scope, that means outside the function. But now what if we wanted to access it from within the function anyway? Well, that is easy. We just put the keyword global and then we put the name of the variable. And this is global scope. And now if we echo it out, that happens here, we call the function, and here we go. Now it works, just because I used this keyword. If I commented that out, then we have the exact same situation that we had before. It is undefined. Okay? So this is highly important. With the keyword global, you can access global variables locally. There you go. And what is important, global variables are always stored in an array named globals. Okay, so this for some people is maybe new. For me it was new. I didn't know that until recently. And when you declare variables globally, they always, well, get stored in an array. Now let me show you that array. I already did that here to print it out in a readable way for us. So this is the name of the global. It's a super global. This is why it's written in all capital letters. And when we print that out, we get an array. So what's in this array? In this array, we have something about the get method, the post method, which is all empty because there are no variables in it, cookies, files, we don't have that either. But down here, you see, we have an array, globals, and this has something stored in it, which is called global scope and points to the value 4, which is exactly what we did here in the first line. Okay? And this is also how you could access this variable from within the function. Well, you can go ahead and just call it global like we did here, but you could also go ahead and echo out the variable from within this array. And here's how it works. Well, how do you echo out something that is in an array? You just call the array first, and array is $globals, all capital letters, important. And then you go ahead put those brackets here, and then you choose the key is always the name of the variable. So the key in this case, or the index, if you will, is global scope. Okay, so just go ahead, copy global scope, put it in here, and put those signs around the word. And sorry, you cannot echo it out. You have to print R it, okay? Because this will throw an error of array to string conversion. You can't echo out arrays, if you remember. Okay, let's comment that out so we don't have so much text here. Here we go. Now, okay, beautify this a little. Now, we declared the variable global scope and assigned the value 4 to it. Then we wrote a test function that prints out the key and the value from global scope in this globals array, okay? And then we call the function, see what happens. Here we go, we have 4, okay? This is exactly the same thing as doing this like we did before. Like global scope, here we go, okay? It's the exact same thing. You can write it like this. Excuse me, I forgot that. So you can write it like this, or you can write it like that. So these are different kinds of accessing global variables within a function. Now, last thing that we have to talk about is the static keywords. Remember, we have local, we have global, and now, last but not least, we have static. Now, what does static do? So normally, when you execute a function or when it is completed, all of its variables are deleted. Not in this case because it's declared outside, but if we declare something within our function, like the variable y that equals to 0, well, this variable dies after the function has been executed. So you cannot work with it anymore, for example, okay? And if you want to work with it more, then you have to put it static. That is the keyword here. And with that, the variable y will be living on afterwards, okay? This is important. For example, where we declared the variable y and put the value 0 to it, okay? Now, for example, let's go and echo out the variable y and afterwards increase it by 1. Now, what happens? If we call it, the function, it is 0. Now, if we call it again, it is 1. And this is important because the first time we called it, we declared y, we echoed it out, that's why we got 0, and then it got increased to 1. So the next time we called it, it was 1, and now y still exists, and it is 2. Okay, and this is important. If you were to erase the static keyword here, this will not work. We get 0 both times, and that is because variables in functions, they get deleted after it got executed. So we have y equals 0 in this case, we echo it out, then it gets augmented by 1, but that doesn't matter because next time we call the function, we start with 0 again. So you will never see the increased value because the function y, the variable y ceases to exist after we call the function once. All right. And if you want to keep on working with it, you put the keyword static and there we go. Then you can still work with this variable. And it still has the information it contained from the last time the function was called. And important notice here, this variable is still local to the function, so we can't go ahead and echo out y down here. This will not work because it's undefined, because even if you put it statically, it has a local scope. Okay? I hope I cleared it up a little. I hope you could understand what global and local scope is, because this is highly important and will help you immensely with bug fixing in the future. Hope this was helpful. Have a good night, folks, and I see you in the next tutorial.